Welcome back to Bad Things in History, where the narrator always tries to think of something clever to say in the first sentence. Our series examining the strangest and most troubling events of the 1970s continues, this time focusing on 1971. It was a year full of death and disaster. Government overreach, assassinations, accidents, and explosions were just a few of the horrible things that visited unsuspecting victims. Our first story is about when the United States government accidentally declared a state of emergency. False alarm of 1971. In the event of war or another national crisis, the president needed a way to communicate with the public directly. The emergency broadcast system was established on August 5, 1963, to ensure that the government had this ability. If the president wanted to activate this system, he had to send an order to one of two agencies. These agencies would then send an emergency action notification to radio and television networks. The networks would use a password to authenticate the instructions, after which the message was supposed to be broadcast. Unfortunately, mistakes happened. On February 20, 1971, the wrong notification was sent to television and radio stations. The government was supposed to be ordering a weekly test of the system, but instead a message was sent claiming there was a real emergency. The message told stations to interrupt programming, but it didn't say why. In the resulting confusion, only about 20% of the stations played the message. Here is a recording from one radio station that followed the government's request.
This is an emergency action notification. All broadcast stations shall broadcast emergency action notification message number 1, white card. This station has interrupted its regular program at the request of the United States government to participate in the emergency broadcast system serving the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. During this period, many radio stations will remain on the air broadcasting news and official information for areas assigned to them. This station will remain on the air and will serve the Twin Cities area. If you are not located in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, you should now tune your radio station for your area.
They've run the incorrect tape, Howard. This is a mistake.
This is disregard the last message. Disregard the last message.
40 minutes after sending out the wrong message, broadcasters received new instructions which corrected the mistake. The Federal Communications Commission began an investigation and suspended the use of password-authenticated messages. The process resumed in December 1972. The emergency broadcast system was activated 20,000 times by 1996. None of these were related to a national emergency. Commission to investigate the FBI. The 1970s gave birth to several activist groups. One of them was called the Commission to Investigate the FBI, and its sole purpose was to expose illegal activities by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The commission included 7 members who began extensive surveillance of the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. The citizens who wanted to expose FBI activities took the time to understand when the building was empty and when it was guarded. On the night of March 8, 1971, the group broke into the building. That same night, Muhammad Ali was fighting Joe Frazier. The expectation that many of those guarding the building would be preoccupied with the fight turned out to be true. Over 1,000 classified documents were stolen. The next day, several copies were mailed to news organizations all over the country. The group also called a journalist from a payphone and offered the following statement. On the night of March 8, 1971, the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI removed files from the Media, Pennsylvania office of the FBI. These files will now be studied to determine 1. The nature and extent of surveillance and intimidation carried on by this office of the FBI, particularly against groups and individuals working for a more just, humane, and peaceful society. 2. To determine how much of the FBI's efforts are spent on relatively minor crimes by the poor and the powerless, against whom they can get a more glamorous conviction rate. Instead of investigating truly serious crimes by those with money and influence which cause great damage to the lives of many people, crimes such as war profiteering, monopolistic practices, institutional racism, organized crime, and the mass distribution of lethal drugs. Finally, 3. The extent of illegal practices by the FBI such as eavesdropping, entrapment, and the use of provocateurs and informers. Most media outlets refused to publish the materials for fear of angering the government, but copies of the documents finally began appearing in print in March 1972. The classified material showed that the FBI used postal workers and switchboard operators to spy on black college students. They also enlisted spies to report on leaders of organizations that fought for civil rights. The FBI assigned over 200 agents to investigate the burglary and find those responsible. However, they failed to discover who stole the documents and closed the case on March 11, 1976. In 2014, several of the thieves finally agreed to go public. None of them were ever arrested. Assassination of Efraim Elrom. The People's Liberation Army of Turkey was created in 1968. One of its goals was to eliminate anything American from Turkish society. They did this by kidnapping important people. Efraim Elrom was born in Poland in 1911. He retired from the Israeli police force after 27 years of service. Efraim was then sent to the Israeli embassy in Turkey, where he worked as consul general. It was his job to assist and protect citizens from his country while they were in Turkey. On May 17, 1971, Efraim returned to his apartment for lunch and was ambushed by armed gunmen. Efraim fought back but was overwhelmed. He was wrapped in a sheet, then taken to a waiting car, and from there he was moved to an unknown location. The Liberation Army demanded the Turkish government release several of its members that had been arrested and imprisoned. Instead of obeying, the government began arresting anybody suspected of working with the Liberation Army. The abductors did not let Efraim go free. They decided to kill him. On May 23, 1971, his corpse was found with 3 bullet holes in the head. The Turkish government responded with more mass arrests and crackdowns. Relations between Israel and Turkey were further strained by the incident, as Israeli officials believed that Turkish officials didn't really try to save Efraim. Clarkston Explosion. Clarkston is a town in the central lowlands of Scotland. Most of the time, life in this rural area is predictable and boring, but on one fateful day, residents would witness an exciting and dangerous event. As shops opened up on the morning of October 20, 1971, and customers began arriving, everyone noticed a strange smell. It was the putrid scent of rotten eggs that is purposely injected into natural gas. It seemed obvious to everyone that there was a gas leak somewhere nearby. The town sent engineers to investigate. They kept looking but couldn't figure out where the smell was coming from. The engineers gave up and went home, but they returned and continued looking for the source of the leak the next day. On the afternoon of October 21st, as the effort to find the gas leak continued, time finally ran out. A huge explosion occurred beneath the street, destroying 10 shops and a parking lot, and a nearby bus with tourists was also caught in the blast. 22 people were killed, at least 100 were injured. An inquiry was held on February 11, 1972. Nobody was found to be at fault. The reason for the gas leak was a simple oversight. When pipes were installed beneath the road, nobody thought to install additional support for them. The vibration caused by vehicles on the road resulted in cracks forming in the pipes. The gas then leaked into spaces below the street and became a ticking time bomb. Caringorm Plateau Disaster. The Caringorms are a mountainous area of Scotland known for having violent and random weather patterns. Snow can fall at any time of the year, and ice covers the mountains even in summer. In November 1971, a group of 14 teenage students from Edinburgh traveled to the village of Kincraig. They were there with several instructors that specialized in outdoor education. One of them was a 23-year-old man named Ben Beatty. His girlfriend, 21-year-old Catherine Davidson, was also a certified instructor. On the morning of November 20th, the students began a journey over the Caringorm Plateau. The students split into two groups. Some went with Ben and the rest went with Catherine. They were taking different routes but expected to reach their destination at roughly the same time. A cabin was waiting on the other side of the mountain, and that is where they would all spend the night. Ben and his team made it to the cabin, but Catherine and her students never appeared. When Ben Beatty and his team reached the nearby town, they notified authorities. By the time rescue teams were able to look for the missing group, it was November 22nd. A helicopter spotted Catherine crawling along the mountain. After rescuing her, they found 6 of her students buried in the snow. One of them was still alive. Catherine and the barely living student eventually recovered, but the others were dead. As rescuers soon learned, during the journey the weather took a turn for the worse. Catherine couldn't get her bearings and was unable to navigate to her destination. She decided to shelter in place with the students. They spent the night on the mountain in their sleeping bags, where most of them froze to death. Parents of the dead children wanted someone to be held accountable, but ultimately nobody was held responsible for the disaster. Ben Beatty would continue his life as a mountaineer. He died in 1978 while climbing in the Himalayas. Catherine, after recovering from her injuries, moved to Canada. First successful hijacking in Canada. Patrick Critton was born in Harlem in 1947 and was attracted to criminal behavior from youth. On July 29, 1971, he robbed a bank in New York City with 4 other accomplices. Instead of getting away with cash and valuables, the robbers had a shootout with the police. Everyone was killed or captured, except Patrick. Patrick fled to Canada, certain that U.S. authorities were looking for him. But after arriving, he wasn't content to simply remain anonymous. He wanted to escape the reach of the United States law enforcement and was willing to do anything to accomplish that goal. Somehow, Patrick acquired a handgun and a grenade. Then, on November 26, 1971, he boarded Air Canada Flight 932. It was a DC-9 sitting on the runway in Thunder Bay, Ontario. The flight was supposed to go to Toronto, but Patrick wanted to make some changes to the itinerary. He handed a note to the flight attendant, which read, "Think. We have fragmentation grenades and a .38 caliber revolver. Take me to the captain. We are going to Havana. This is no joke." The pilot did as he was told. Passengers were let off the plane in Toronto, then it traveled to Havana. After landing in Havana, Patrick got off the plane. The aircraft and crew returned to Canada unharmed. In the 1970s, plane hijackings were quite common. Cuba did not have extradition treaties with most countries, so it was a popular destination for plane hijackers. Patrick was imprisoned in Havana for several months. After being released, he found work on a sugar plantation in 1974. In 1976, he left Cuba for Tanzania, where he married and had 2 children. Patrick even became a school teacher. Eventually, he wanted to come home. In 1991, Patrick applied for a U.S. passport using his real name. For reasons that are not understood, his request was approved. He returned to the United States in 1994. After establishing a new life for himself, Patrick spent much of his time helping disadvantaged children. In 2001, a Canadian detective found an article about Patrick Critton and his work with troubled teens. Undercover police in New York assisted by acquiring Patrick's fingerprints. They were then compared to a ginger ale can that he had touched on the flight in 1971. The fingerprints were a match. Patrick was arrested and sent to Canada. When police appeared to arrest him, Patrick said, "What took you so long? I've been waiting for that knock on the door for 7 years." A Canadian court sentenced him to 3 years. Patrick served a little over a year, then returned to the United States. Incompetence and violence were some of the more depressing features of 1971. It's truly a wonder that more people didn't die. Did you know about any of these events before watching this episode? Tell us what you think about the stories we covered in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel if you want to see the next entry in this series, and if you want to make sure that more people see this, please hit the like button. It really does make a difference. Thank you for watching Bad Things in History.